Righty, hopefully everyone should have been notified that the recording started.
Very good. So let me formally welcome everybody to our Surrey Heath Partnership, which is obviously working together to try and drive community cohesion and improve the safety and welfare of all of our residents. So welcome. Apologies for absence, please, James.
Thank you very much, Chair. So from Surrey Police, we've had apologies from Inspector Gemma Taylor, who is represented instead today by Inspector Ryan Scott. From the NHS Frimley Integrated Care Board, Jonathan Sly sends his apologies. From Surrey County Council, Francesca Hyde sends her apologies. From Surrey Fire and Rescue, Jim Tallick sends his apologies. From the Probation Service, Trudy Turner sends her apologies. And from Voluntary Support North Surrey, Celeste Shepperton sends her apologies. And Libby Holcomb is joining us in her place today. Also, Sarah Haywood from the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner for Surrey will be joining us, but just a little bit later on in the meeting.
That was a lot to get through, wasn't it, James? Right, thank you. And I think Ryan's addition is a permanent, but not a permanent transfer, but he's here for the long haul. Hopefully, aren't you, Ryan? Replacing Gemma, who's off in Staines, I think, from memory. Okay, yes, that's correct. So yeah, so okay, so minutes of previous meeting were circulated. Any issues or concerns with those from anybody? No. Okay, we'll take those as a true record then. Thank you. And we move swiftly on to CCTV update from Bob Darkins. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Sean. Right, so to give you some context then, I know this has been discussed at previous partnership meetings. The Crime and Disorder Act of 1998 enacted responsibility to local authorities to work in partnership in dealing with public safety in their locality. And like many other local authorities, Surrey Heath Borough Council invested in CCTV in Camberley in 1997, with further additions in 2002 and 2010. The existing specification at this time includes 30 CCTV cameras located in Camberley Town Centre and 2 monitoring the Parade shops on the Old Dean estate. Surrey Heath entered into an agreement with Woking Borough Council at that time relating to the resourcing of the control room and the ongoing service of the cameras, with the control room originally located at Woking Police Station. And as of December 2020, it relocated to the Peacock Shopping Centre. The cost to Surrey Heath Borough Council to maintain this service is currently provided by Woking Borough Council is in the region of £70,000 a year. The main beneficiary of the imagery provided by these cameras is Surrey Police, who use the footage in crime investigation and for direction of staff to ongoing incidents of crime and antisocial behaviour. A proposal to transfer the running of this service from Woking Borough Council to Runnymede Borough Council was taken to Council Executive in January of this year, where the proposal was agreed. Contained within this proposal was an aspiration to reduce the amount of cameras from the original 30 to a slimmed down footprint of 16 cameras, 14 in the town centre and 2 on the Old Dean estate. The rationale for the reduction of the cameras was based on the current usage of those cameras in monitoring lifetime incidents, as well as historic requests for footage from Woking Borough Council's control room. Each month I get a monthly report which identifies which cameras were used and what it was that they were used for. And I keep a very simple table that I can refer to. Some of the cameras are very infrequently used due to their location from one month to another. And I can think in particular, we have 2 cameras in the Knoll Road car park, which have probably only been used once or twice in the last 3 or 4 years to monitor a live incident. So some of these cameras are very infrequently used due to their location. The improvement in technology over the last 20 or so years has given greater range with the new generation of cameras, in as much as they can see much further with greater clarity than they could before. The maintenance costs alone do not justify the existence of these cameras. As well as that, a consideration under legislation and guidance from the Surveillance Commissioner and the Information Commissioner's Office dictates that cameras have to be justified in their siting and their use. And given that some of our cameras have not been used for such a long time, this cannot be provided given how infrequently they are used. The advantages of this transfer and reduction will be a reduction in yearly running costs in the region of around £15,000 per year in the first year, as well as an increase in operator coverage from the current maximum that Woking can provide of 18 hours a day on a good day, to a 24-hour day service provided by Runnymede Borough Council. There is also an aspiration for provision of an out-of-hours call centre facility taken on by Runnymede, but that is at some point in the future. The next stage, from my perspective, is a detailed site survey with colleagues from Runnymede Borough Council and their management agency, and then infrastructure review with colleagues with a view to the initial transfer of service, hopefully before the end of this year. So that's where we are at the moment with regards to our public realm cameras in Camberley Town Centre. Sean. Happy to answer any questions that there might be.
Exactly, that's exactly what I was going to make, Bob. So any questions on that from anybody? Please, Max. Yeah.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for that. Just a question really about rough sleepers, because obviously sometimes they do sleep in Knoll Road car park, and you were referencing removal of cameras. I'm just thinking if there wasn't an incident.
So a separate piece of work with regards to that is there is a review of cameras in the car parks that's actually work in progress at the moment. So the public realm cameras, so there's the 2 cameras that are outside of Knoll Road, all they would actually be able to see is the exterior of the car park. My understanding is that there is going to be a new provision internally to Knoll Road car park, making it much more safe than it could be viewed as at the moment.
Okay, thanks. I have noticed that people seem to be doing a lot of work in there.
Yeah, and that'll be it.
Thank you. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think from memory, maybe somebody on the council side can help me here, but I think it was slightly wider than just the car parks. I can't remember what the other bit of the scope was for the add-on bit.
So there's an enhanced Arnold Walk, which is the alleyway next to the main square car park. So there's infrastructure going into main square car park and Arnold Walk and Knoll Road car park as well.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, and I think that's coming forward for decision next month or 2, Nick, was it? Do you remember? We haven't made a decision on that one yet, but I think it's coming, isn't it?
It is indeed. I can't remember the exact date, Sean, but it's imminent.
Yeah, okay. And then I think there was a third dimension that came out in a discussion recently, which we have some kind of webcam provision more widely across the borough, wasn't that something I heard from Mr. Garrett?
We have redeployable cameras, which are completely independent, so they're solar panel powered, and we can put them anywhere in the borough. I have to be honest, at the moment I'm having some issues with our provider with that, which I'm working on, but they have been used in prosecutions. We had a successful prosecution last year on a fly tip that was caught on camera, so they have value, but they're not without their problems, and they're not the panacea for all ills, because of the way that they're configured. They have to be pointing in the right direction, so they're not manipulative, if that's a word, like they are in the town centre with an operator. These are point and shoot ones, so it's very much dependent on where I point them.
Yeah, very good, very good. I have a suspicion Julia was popping up there to add to that discussion on cameras. Was that right, Julia?
Yeah, all I was going to say is that the 2 car parks, the procurement exercise has been done. We've already received the go-ahead from executive for that. It's for the additional cameras, which I believe are to do with the parks and some other open spaces, that is yet to go. So the people that you've seen, Mags, across in Knoll Road will be there scoping out. The contract has been awarded and that piece of work has started.
Thank you, Julia. Yeah, so I mean, looking sort of holistically across all those elements, you could see there's an upgrade program happening where at the end of that process, we believe we're going to get better quality and a better service as well at a reduced cost. I know a number of you will be aware that we are having some financial concerns, but we have decided to prioritise this work in the interest of providing a safe community space in the town centre and other spaces around, so that it's a welcoming place for visitors and residents alike. Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Sean, and thanks, Bob. You mentioned about the ICO mandating, the cameras have to be in use and so on. I'm sure you've got this covered already, but what about public privacy and data protection? These new cameras have obviously got incredibly high resolution. They'll be able to use, I don't know, maybe facial recognition, that sort of thing. Are we confident that public privacy is not going to be affected and that the data and any pictures will be deleted when they're not required anymore?
So I chair the CCTV management group at the council, and each camera has to have what's known as an operational requirement document, which is the justification as to why you want to put a camera where you're putting it. And once that's been done, I have to then complete a data protection impact assessment, which covers that off. In essence, it's what can we see? Why do we need to see it, and who do we share it with? I work very closely with Sally Turnbull, the council's information governance officer. We keep a list of all those. Our CCTV keeps imagery for 28 days, after which point it's overwritten, unless we're using it for a prosecution, in which case we then obviously keep it for the length of that prosecution and any subsequent appeal that might come out of it. So the legislation and the paperwork is all boxed off. The fines are eye-watering should we get it wrong. And with the review and the aspiration of moving to Runnymede, we'll be able to tighten that up quite considerably from any gaps that we have in that provision at this time. And to reassure you, we're well ahead of the game compared to some other local authorities on this.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other comments then, thank you very much to Bob Darkins from Surrey Heath Borough Council. We'll move on to point 4 on the agenda, which is an update from Surrey Police, and I think welcome to Ryan Scott to deliver that. Inspector Ryan Scott. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I do have a PowerPoint presentation that I will try and share, so bear with me. Obviously won't be able to see any hands while I've got the presentation up, so you'll have to either just jump in or save questions to the end if possible. Bear with me. Can everybody see the presentation?
Yeah, for me, it's gone into the funny mode where I think you have to go to display settings and then just switch it. Yeah, I think you have to swap, I think. There, perfect. Thanks, Ryan.
Is that better? Sorry,
Yeah.
I am. Technology is not my friend at all. So yeah, I joined Surrey Heath as Borough Commander in January this year, coming from Woking SNT, where I had previously worked for 2 years as a sergeant. I've got 14 years experience in the police in many different roles. But yeah, that's just a little bit of a background on myself. My priorities while I'm here are ASB of all sorts, including antisocial driving. Theft offences, obviously shoplifting is a huge problem across the country at the moment. Drug offences, including drug dealing, and then violent crime, including weapons offences. That's the 4 priorities that I am working on with my colleagues at the moment. So this is a quick overview of the team that we have at the moment. We have a new, or the PCs have now been allocated their own areas. We are fully staffed up to establishment, so we do have a PC dedicated to every area. We have a new PCSO who's come over from Woking, PCSO Gulnaz Sintak. She has over 20 years experience as a PCSO, so she's very, very knowledgeable in what she's doing. Obviously, she is new to the area. She's not worked here before, but she comes with a wealth of experience. And we have 2 newly qualified PCSOs who have joined the team as well, Chelsea Godber and Molly Rhodes, who have just been tutored. And we have a new PCSO who's due to come to the team for training next month, I believe, who will obviously be another addition, and that will be PCSO Ella Madeline. Some statistics, the date ranges that have been used for this are across the 1st of February 24 to 1st of February 25, and obviously compared to the year beforehand. So over a rolling year, we've seen a 3.3% increase in the solved outcome rate, which is 19% more crimes. and there's been an extra 104 crimes reported compared to the previous year. But interestingly, during January 2025 to the 11th of February 2025, we've seen a 22 less crimes reported to us compared to the same year, the same period in 2024. And that's a reduction across all crime types except domestic incidents. That's the only ones that we've seen an increase in. We've had the results of the joint neighbourhood survey. As we can see from the first box, confidence in Surrey Heath Police has dropped, unfortunately, from the end of last year. I'm obviously going to work with the team to try and increase the confidence in the Surrey Heath neighbourhood teams. If there's any suggestions on how this can be done, then obviously please let me know. The second table at the bottom there shows satisfaction in our engagement. Unfortunately, again, it has dropped over the year, especially with us dealing what is important to the public and keeping them informed about what we're doing. Obviously, we do try and put as much as we can on Facebook and the social media pages, but we do have to be careful with what we're putting out. But that is something that I'll go to the media team to liaise with them to see how we can increase that and how we can keep the public better informed about what we're doing. During the neighbourhood survey, it also had the public priorities. Public priorities remain the same. They're fairly consistent across Western Surrey, not just Surrey Heath. So the public priorities are antisocial driving or speeding, antisocial or inconsiderate parking, unwanted phone calls, litter, burglary. They are the top 5. Antisocial driving and speeding, I'm going to come on to on the next slide, but I do have a PCSO who's taking the lead on this role, utilising the data that I'll come on to see the most affected areas for these reports and looking at operations and other preventative measures that we can put in place. I am aware of another operation that is running with our traffic colleagues who are looking at antisocial driving and how we can work together as a neighbourhood team along with traffic and other departments on how we can tackle that as well. Understand antisocial parking, especially around schools, is a big issue and one that is regularly that we regularly receive complaints about. As police, we're doing what we can around this. We have our road safety colleagues who come out and they issue tickets and parking fines at schools as and when they can, but they are split out amongst the other boroughs as well, and they often have to go to eastern and northern divisions, so they're not just Surrey Heath specific. As stated, the vehicle ASB reports. So during the period of the 1st of November through to the 31st of January, we received 84 reports of ASB involving a vehicle. A large proportion of these took place on the M3, which obviously as an SNT team, we can't get involved in because we don't have the specific vehicles or training. But we can, however, look at the more local problems. Windlesham seems to be a big area, and then up on the Bracknell Road around Bagshot. That's where we seem to have a lot of reports, and down in Deep Cut. So as I say, the PCSO is going to look at that data and come up with some operations that we can tackle ASB driving. Sorry, the title of that. Oh no, this is an update from the Casualty Reduction Officer, who comes out and does the school enforcement, and obviously the road enforcements for us as well. So from the 20th of January through to the 14th of February, he issued 24 speeding tickets, 1 summons for speeding, 2 seatbelt tickets, 3 mobile phone tickets, 2 eyesight tests conducted, both passed, an arrest for drug driving, 5 miscellaneous offences, so window tints and other offences, and 4 vehicles were seized for licence and insurance offences, and 2 FPNs on a school zigzag enforcement. So for one person, that's quite a bit of enforcement that he is actually doing across Surrey Heath for that time period. So as you can see, we are trying to take this as seriously as we can. ASB legislation that we've issued in Surrey Heath over the last few months. So this is data from the 1st of October through to the beginning of the year. There were 11 community protection warnings, 2 community protection notices, no full property closures, 5 partial closures, 4 closure warning letters, 6 ASB 2 letters, and 0 ASB 3 letters. Interestingly, from the beginning of January through to the 14th of February, when I put this presentation together, we had issued another 11 community protection warnings, with 2 more being drafted. Since then, we have actually issued a couple more. 1 community protection notice, 1 full property closure is being case built at this time, a partial closure, 5 closure warning letters have been given, including to a business or 2, 22 ASB warning letters, and 1 ASB 3 warning letter. That mainly is to do with the ASB problems that we've had in the town centre over the last few weekends. Quarterly prevention focus for us, fraud, cybercrime, drugs and business is February to April. We are obviously setting up little operations and talks around these, and engagements from the PTSOs and the NSOs will be targeted at these when they go and do their talks. May and June will be road safety, burglary, violence and violence against women and girls. ASB business crime and vehicle crime for July to October, and then moving into the winter months, again burglary picks up during the winter months as we all know, and then the drugs, violence and violence against women and girls over the Christmas period with Christmas dues and stuff like that. We often tend to see an increase in the violence against women and girls, and obviously over the summer months, hence why they are our focus. One of our main priorities at the moment is Camberley Town. Again, we've seen an increase in the amount of ASB, mainly focused around 10-pin and the atrium. Offences that we've seen there have included sexual assaults, assaults on youths, security and police officers, mentions of weapons. We've had theft linked to the youths involved in the ASB, and criminal damage as well. We've utilised dispersal powers over 3 weekends. We haven't had them on for the last 2 weekends because it has taken a dip again. But we dispersed in excess of 20 to 30 youths from the town over those 3 weekends, made multiple arrests, and as you've previously seen, served multiple ASB warning letters, which we go and serve in the days afterwards with parents, and we have a discussion with the parents whilst we're there. It's not just served on the kids at the time. And we have had assistance from our Op Chariot patrols, which is our town centre violence patrols. We've had assistance from them and special constables, and that has helped reduce the amount of issues that we've had quite drastically, quite quickly. And it's been raised on our internal TTCG, which is a meeting we have every 2 weeks where we discuss our biggest priorities and how we can tackle them. And obviously we are doing a multi-agency approach to solving the issues in town. So this is the map for the ASB reports, and also you can see from the left there we've got the 2 big red dots which indicate the 10-pin and the atrium as the biggest area that we have. The red indicates the rowdy nuisance behaviour ASB. The blue ones I think is vehicle related, and then the others are just general types of ASB. So as we can see, it is concentrated around the atrium and 10-pin, and we are working closely with them. So I had a meeting with 10-pin last week in relation to how we can tackle it and work together, and I'm setting one up with the atrium coming up as well. So there's lots of stuff going on to tackle the ASB that we see in town. And then on to any questions. I will end this so I can see hands.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. As always,
Thank
huge
you.
amount ongoing. Yeah, huge amount ongoing. And thank you to you and the team on behalf of all of us and the stakeholders as well, and the community more widely. It's much appreciated. Questions for Ryan, people? God, you were quick on the draw there, Mr. Wilson. Right, Richard, please.
Thanks, and thanks for the presentation, Ryan. And although you said that confidence in the police has dropped, it's only dropped a tiny bit amount in Surrey Heath, and you're still top of the division with that. Burglary. So we've had a few evenings where we've gone out in groups with police, housing association, council, enforcement officers and councillors and everything, and knocked on doors to help raise awareness about how to prevent burglary. Are you thinking of having any more of them, either in the summer or next winter?
Yes, when it comes up to the summer months where we may see a bit more of an increase again, and especially next winter, yes, that is something that we will definitely look at doing again. Thankfully, burglaries have dropped significantly. I know we were seeing a lot before Christmas, before I joined with the family gold, especially being the biggest targets. Thankfully, that has dropped off. We still see the odd one every now and then. So yes, it is something that is definitely going to be happening again in the future. So we'll make contact to sort those out.
That's great.
Could I just, Richard, could I just call out Neighbourhood Watch as well, because they're obviously a key part of that. And I think Alan's joined us today as a deputy as well for the lead from Neighbourhood Watch. So yeah, just want to make sure we give them recognition in that campaign. So go on, Richard.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. If I could squeeze in another question, Sean, without putting my hand up again. It's just on the ASB in Camberley Town Centre and the use of the dispersal order. It's not unique to Camberley Town Centre, is it? The other town centres have done this across Surrey and had. Is it just a coincidence that it's happened at the same time, or is there anything particular that's going on?
I think it's just one of those things that's happened. As you say, it's not just Surrey Heath or Camberley that's been experiencing this. Guildford, it's been a problem for a long time, especially on the Sundays. And I know there was I can't remember which town centre it was, just over the border, who had dispersals on at the same weekends we did because of the increase in ASB that they were seeing. I think we had an issue with lots of youths coming over from other areas. So a lot of the people that we were dealing with during those 3 weekends when we had the dispersals on, they weren't local youths. We had a lot coming over on the first weekend when we had real problems from Farnborough. So a lot of them were Hampshire that were coming across. And then the following weekends, we had them coming over from Ash and Guildford as well. So obviously there were some Camberley children or Surrey Heath children that were dispersed between them, but we think that's smaller groups meeting and congregating and socializing. And obviously we don't want to stop these kids meeting and socializing. That's not what we want to do. It's the behavior that goes along with it. But I think it's just one of those things that will happen every now and then sporadically. You'll get children come across, try and chance it, test the local police, see what the atmosphere is in the town. And if they don't get a quick response, they'll just carry on. Whereas I think we got on this quite quickly with the dispersal orders, with the arrests and the ASB letters, and it seems to have had the impact that we wanted quite quickly. So after those 3 weekends, we haven't had any reports over the last 2 weekends of antisocial behaviour in the town.
Well, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just got a couple. There was a lot of stats in there at one point, Ryan, and I thought slightly differently to Richard. I thought there'd been quite a drop across all areas in Q4. Now, maybe it wasn't confidence, maybe it was one of the other stats. Was that discussed amongst your peers? Because I thought I saw it across all the areas. It kind of dropped from low 80s to, should we say, mid 70s.
Yes, we've got a meeting with all the borough commanders next week, I believe it is, or the week after, where we will be discussing all these, the stats and the public confidence. So yes, that is something that will be discussed.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just didn't know whether there was a common theme as to why it dropped in Q4. I can't remember, because some of these things could be dependent on media activity and stuff. You know, you just need one bad case, don't you? And then suddenly, actually, reality hasn't changed, but the perception has. Okay. Yeah. The other one was we had some discussions previously around some challenges in Old Dean. I think there was a closure order on a house there adjacent to the parade. We had some issues, I think, with benches outside the cafe and people congregating. I just wondered, from your point of view, does that seem to have calmed down now in terms of ASB in that area?
As far as I'm aware, yeah, we've had very little reports of ASB on the Old Dean, especially around the benches and the shops. again, I think the police action up there has had the desired effect, or the partner approach has had the desired effect. Yeah, we've seen very, very little activity up there and reports coming through.
Okay. And I'll keep going unless anybody else puts hand up. Noted the driving and the roads activity. I think in some cases, I think the councillors are supporting that by raising issues around parking and stuff, and the need for WL lines and all that kind of stuff as a supplementary thing. I know that's something that's being considered in my own area. So it's good to see kind of the coordination between different groups there. Just a number of us will have seen, but not everybody, that there's I think there's a consultation coming out for substantial speed restrictions on Red Road, the Maltway, one or two other places. I don't know whether there's I don't know whether we can expect more of those. Have you had any insights from Surrey whether there's anything else coming down the line? No, okay. So you're the same as us, just a consulted partner. Yeah, but I mean that will assist, I think, in one or two areas, and section of the A30 as well. Yeah. I think they wanted to reduce the speed limit there as well, so that hopefully will assist. I think there's as people probably appreciate, we've got a number of people crisscrossing the borough, not necessarily our residents, but they can be crossing from various places to other places, particularly to get on the M3. Exactly. I was concerned about the domestic incidents piece not declining, and that's an area that we have tried to spend time on here. I know it's the work that the OPCC has been doing around that area as well, and maybe we're talking about it later. I can't remember, but we had two features, I think, in Heathsea, didn't we, Jane? One around, I know one was on ASB, wasn't it, and one was on violence against women and girls, I think, wasn't it? Or domestic abuse. Domestic abuse. Yeah. Is there anything from the police side we can learn from what we're seeing in those incidents, and anything we can do as a partnership to assist?
I think the increase in the crime statistics is people are getting more confident in reporting. They're actually recognizing domestic abuse sooner and reporting it to us. But we're also, as a force, getting better at recognizing other offences throughout the domestics. So if someone reports to us an assault, we're getting better at recognizing when there's coercive controlling behaviour or other offences that are being committed throughout the relationship, which then obviously leads on to other occurrences being created. So I think there's the increase just in reporting as a standard, but also us recognizing other offences happening, which is positives from both sides.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great point. I completely and utterly missed that. Thank you. Which is, I think, part of our journey in terms of domestic incidents will be the stats will go up because we want that reporting, we want that awareness. We've probably only been seeing the top of the iceberg, and we want to see the bottom of it, and then it'll come down as we work through all the issues and challenges and cultural change that we need. So yeah, thank you for highlighting. That's a really good point.
But
Jane?
Again, that's something that's not just specific to Surrey Heath. Again, it's across the board that we've seen that increase, which I think is that twofold approach.
Yeah, no, perfect. We had exactly in other contexts, I've had exactly that journey around safety, which is you can only do something about safety if you know what the issues are, and then you address the issues. But if people are not reporting, you can't address it. So it's exactly the same journey we'll probably experience here. Jane, please.
Yeah, I was just going to come in about DA and the fact that it isn't a single agency issue. It goes right across the board, and it's awareness levels and people being able to recognise it from all interactions that you have, right the way through from perhaps benefits that families may be claiming, and it's just about building the knowledge and the confidence to actually sort of act on what you think you see. And that takes time, and I do think it's happening, and actually it linked me on to sort of something that perhaps I'm trying to set up for the next meeting, because now there are lots of things that are leaked in, and I know this isn't the preventative side of it, it's actually dealing with with sort of like the sanctuary scheme and the IDVAs and everything else that supports families. after a DA or DA incidents, but actually about sort of getting the agencies that actually deal with that coming back to sort of see us in May to update on the reports that that we all contribute through different funding streams. But I'll talk to you about that separately, Sean. But in effect, I think what I'm just saying is it's a whole sort of example of us actually becoming more knowledgeable and confident in actually, recognising and taking action on this, and posing, perhaps sort of diplomatic questions that could bring around disclosures.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, everybody should feel safe in their home, and we need to work through all those issues. Yeah. Last one from my side, unless any other hands are up, is I noticed you put the team's picture up, which is interesting. I think you might have just reshuffled them a little bit. So I think Joe might have used to be in the Villages, and I think we might move back to John, who's our fantastic dancer from memory at the Mayor's event last year. Just wondered whether that is something you were thinking of sharing, or not, because I'm just conscious you don't necessarily want 1,000 people phoning your key resources.
I probably won't, because of the officers' phone numbers and stuff on there. I don't want them being used as personal contacts. But yeah, we did have a little bit of a reshuffle because we had one officer leave to go off to the dog sections. So we've had a little bit of a shuffle of where people have gone.
Could you do a version without the phone numbers so that we could share that, and then everybody knows who the key resources are in their areas? Because we could push that out to this group, but we could also push it out to the councillors as well, so they know who the local resource is. If that's okay, it'd be brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I'll get someone to do that.
Perfect. Any other questions for Ryan, everybody? No? Okay. Thanks again. Thank you, Ryan Scott from Surrey Police. So we move now on to gambling addiction. Sorry, Ryan, you had something up? Oh, no. Yeah. Okay. We move on to gambling addiction, which I think is Lucy Gate from Surrey County Council is going to give us an insight into the work that's being done there. Thank you. Welcome, Lucy.
Hello, everybody. What I'll do is I'll just share my, I've got a few slides. Okay, so as said previously, I can't see anybody's hands or anything, so please do give me a shout if you have any questions or queries. So my name's Lucy Gate. I'm Public Health Principal and Health Psychologist at Surrey County Council, with a lead for mental and emotional wellbeing in adults, and so gambling related harms has clearly been part of this agenda. So I think I was at the Community Safety Partnership at Surrey County Council, and as part of our work, I also co-chair the Mental Health Prevention Board on behalf of the Health and Wellbeing Board for Surrey. And so as follow-up to one of those, I was asked to come here and just give you a summary. So please do interject if you have any questions, anything that you think could add and enhance this, because this really is looking at whole council's approach to addressing gambling related harm. And as we had, it's very similar to domestic abuse. It's very much, it needs to be multi-agency for this to make any difference to people's lives. So I'll give you a little bit of background of the national direction, how we're looking at identifying need, the programme for addressing this need, and any next steps. So gambling, what's the harm? So I don't know what's like that. 6 to 10 people for every individual who is involved in gambling will be affected. So it's the ripple effect on communities that we're particularly interested in. The harmful gambling is kind of frequency of gambling which, as we know, it's progressive and has this kind of elevated risk. We know as well that, let's say, it's a population level need. It's about the families and the communities closely linked with people who are gambling that really does cause the harm. And we know that it disproportionately affects people who are socioeconomically deprived, or who we would say are in disadvantaged groups. so we know they have the lowest gambling participation rates. So this would be kind of who would be in the kind of health and well-being strategy key neighbourhoods, but the highest level of harmful gambling. So it's often masked in the data that we have, and obviously also more susceptible to the harms. And we know it also is likely to be exacerbating the health inequalities. So nationally, the LGA produced guidance on what we should be doing, which would include local authority licensing and planning, public health, mental health services, housing and homelessness services, clinical commissioning groups, now NHS partners, the ICB, and gambling business, and those with lived experience of gambling. So to adopt a public health approach to this, it's very much how you'll understand the public health approach being adopted for knife crime, for example. It's understanding where the problems are, really looking at who the partners are in across the system who can deliver, and becoming much more prevention focused. This isn't just about kind of mopping up those people who are experiencing the harms. It's about ensuring that we have protection for families and communities that may be affected, and that we really are, as I was saying, addressing those inequalities. So the whole council approach, the overall aim, we're going to increase our understanding of need, prevention and awareness raising, improved and scaled brief advice, ensuring that we have effective patient pathways for treatment, looking at licensing and enforcement of gambling premises. We're talking very much about premises, but we know if I speak to gambling, I'm sure what pops into a lot of your minds is kind of online gambling. So looking at those kind of commercial determinants of health as well, in relation to advertising and the kind of precursors that get people into that kind of online activity, and considering planning in relation to the location and licensing of gambling premises. So part of this, we've set up a strategic oversight group, which follows this and includes these kind of partners that I've outlined. And this is the governance for that partnership. So we've got the whole systems approach to gambling, which reports into the Health and Wellbeing Board for Surrey, and will also report into the newly formed Community Safety Partnership as well. We have kind of cross-fertilisation and membership into the Health and Planning Forum and Licensing Forum, and that's to deliver on these kind of 5 key work streams. We've also, in the scoping work that's been done, now also have dotted line into the Combating Drugs Partnership for delivery of the prevention and education and the kind of treatment work stream as well. And we have a newly commissioned service in Surrey, which is about to launch, which is responding to harms in women and those of kind of multiple disadvantage. So just to give you a little bit of background on what's the kind of need. So we started doing digital and social media campaign back in November, December, and in kind of a month's period, there was over 5,000 clicks onto the adverts and links across to Healthy Surrey, showing that there are people who are feeling they need some help. However, the translation into getting support through the gambling helpline, it is really quite low. So this is something that we kind of need to address as a partnership. As we've also done, and I can share this with you, it's quite a gutsy piece of work, a needs assessment. So we have developed a high-level needs assessment, which shows there are, like I was saying, this kind of population level need where we have people experiencing problem, moderate and low level harms. And this was on data. I just wanted to really share this. So we had this on the data from Census and the Health Survey for England from kind of 2018, 2021. And then in 2023, we had a new piece of data from which includes the Problem Gambling Severity Index, which I'll explain a bit in a moment, which started to really show us where some of the issues may be across the county. Now, what I really wanted to say is in the last year, that risk has increased significantly across all areas, and the areas of most need have kind of changed. But just to say what a fast moving picture this is, and the level of gambling related harm is something which is increasing significantly year on year.
Lucy,
sorry, yeah.
Lucy,
Yes.
sorry, Sean here. Because that's quite, as you said, quite punchy. Could I just ask a question on that one while we got the slide in front of us?
Yeah, I'll go back. That's fine. Yeah.
I'm not sure whether all the partners would be aware, but on a population basis, we should be much lower in that chart, probably second or third from bottom. And actually, Spelthorne should also be quite low in terms of population. Now, Spelthorne, I think I understand from what you said, which is probably proportionate to the socioeconomics at play there. But I don't. Could you just remind us why Surrey Heath is so high relative to our population and socioeconomics?
We don't know, so we need to explore that. But what we have seen is there has been a change in the last year. So that Runnymede has now, I'll come on to it in just a moment, but Runnymede and Elmbridge actually are now some of the highest level need areas. So it has shifted. So like you say, Spelthorne, you kind of think, oh, I understand that, but things have changed. And this isn't, I'll come on to what the questions are, because I think it's important that you understand what we mean by risk as well when I show you what the actual questions are. But I will come back to it. But if I don't answer your question, please do interject.
Thank you.
So the current scoping that we're also doing is to understand where premises are. So like I was saying, we know a lot of this is online, but there are still loss leader premises which are placed kind of at the end of trading estates, for example. So it's kind of a priming, then somebody will return at home and access online. There is some evidence for that. So we're still looking at that, but I just wanted to let you know, so this is what the questions are in the problem gambling severity index. There's 9 questions, and it's very much the proportion of what's being lost against what's available. So that's why it's, you know, are you losing more than you can afford to lose? Gambling larger amounts of money, feeling guilty about it, feeling anxious about it. So you can see it's really when it's becoming a problem for somebody. And then these are scored and ranked by score to illustrate the level of harm. Now this is Surrey Heath. I've literally been sent this just before I came into the meetings. There's a big national conference on at the moment, and these have just been released. So what we had in Surrey Heath now, so this is the most up-to-date data, you can see that the kind of lower risk in Surrey Heath is greater than that of the national average. But the other groups are, I would say they're less, but they're comparable, aren't they, of moderate and problem gambling. So 70% of residents in Surrey Heath are estimated to have this kind of low risk gambling, 2.8% moderate and 2.6% problem gambling. What is good news is that 79% of those who are of the 2.6% who have the higher, what we call problem gambling, have access to treatment support to cut down on their gambling. So that's good news. There's still 20% that haven't, that need support to do that. And the total fiscal costs, I can send you the breakdown, I can send you the profile behind this for your reference, is estimated to be around 1.5 million a year to Surrey Heath on kind of ripple costs. This is where we've got to now in kind of ranking need, and what we're looking at is who greatest need, where it's exceeding that of the national average across all problem levels, to look at where we're going to prioritise doing a prototype of at place with priority neighbourhoods. We're also looking at areas with priority neighbourhoods as well. But everything that we have can absolutely be used in Surrey Heath. But just to share that with you, I'll share these slides so you get some time to digest it as well, and please do come back to me if you have any questions. So when we're looking at how do we respond, we've been scoping with the group as I've outlined with the kind of strategy group as to what some of the actions could be. So the first one is improving the understanding of needs. With this, we've got something called the SHAPE tool, which allows us to look at geography. So we'll be able to, in response to your query just now, we'll be able to look where is some of the need being masked by difference across neighbourhoods, for example. And we'll be able to share that with you as it develops. We're also looking in those neighbourhoods, then reviewing with schools, colleges, universities, looking at what we could do to embed some of that prevention and targeting some of those most vulnerable with the healthy schools approach. There's lots of PHSE opportunities with explaining, you know, changes to maths lessons to understand odds, for example, and English to understand the power of marketing, for example. We're also seeing a huge translation from gaming and a lot of the psychology in gaming and how that's translating to people engaging in online gambling, which is a big deal for people, especially in that transition phase. And we have sadly seen that in relation to people accessing mental health support after big financial losses. So lots of work that we can do there on financial support with financial management and gambling awareness, and digital and social media kind of pieces, that prevention piece. Alongside that, with that prevention piece is for targeting family members and communities of friends of people who people are suspecting may have problems. So we have done some initial insight work which has highlighted that the number one person people are going to talk to about this isn't a GP or whatever, it is obviously a friend or family member, so to give them the right advice and support. Like I say, we're going to improve access to gambling support through scaled brief advice and training, development and rollout of different, more sophisticated pathways. And we're also looking at scoping a piece of research with the University of Surrey which will align with the cost of living programme. There's new NICE guidance released in the last month or so on what those treatment pathways should look like, and there's huge gaps in research backup for what's in place, so we will be looking at that. Like I was saying, the co-development of guidance for licensing and enforcement for gambling premises, and likewise for planning policy. We'll also be looking at, as I was saying, the commercial determinants of health. So what are the opportunities in gambling, advertising and sponsorship, raising awareness of links and challenges, as I was saying, with gaming. And we are looking at alignment with the food strategy, because what we've seen is this very much aligns with a number of different advertising pieces for public health. We're also have been working with the serious organised crime lead, and we're particularly interested in exploring possible links with illegal money lending for gambling, especially in those more vulnerable groups. Exploring further opportunities, as I was saying, with the Serious Organised Crime Partnership Board. Also possible links with county lines in some of the younger, more vulnerable groups. And we'd also like to be looking at perhaps a modification to custody suite questionnaire to include identification and brief advice, really to understand maybe on some of offences like shoplifting offences, drug and theft offences, if there's any gambling related harm there, so that we can kind of address that together and make sure the pathways are in place. And also there's some national opportunities of perhaps, gambling with the use of credit cards, for example, where the money's not available, and making someone much more vulnerable to those kind of those crime links. So that's just a kind of whistle-stop tour of the where we are with the programme. And so I suppose it's really just over to you as to how would you like best to link in with us, to work with us, any initial thoughts? Just close as to...
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. That's really, really interesting information, and obviously good to see it's data driven as well, so it can be targeted. That's fantastic. Before we maybe come on to your question on how we could work together, any questions for Lucy in terms of the things that she's presented and its implications for Surrey Heath? Nobody jumping out? Okay. Because I suspect there's a few of you come across people at risk here more than I do. So it's good that I think we've had this update. I mean, Lucy, what are you looking for in terms of engagement with the borough with the boroughs? Are you looking for places to pilot projects, or look at specific interventions? I mean, just for an example, we know we've got a 10-year life expectancy issue for males between one side of the A30, the other side of the A30, between Aldine and St Paul's, for example. So I suspect we know where some of the issues might be, and you've alluded to it, the data.
Yes, so thank you, that's really helpful. Yes, I would be really interested to hear if there's any of those areas you think actually we're doing this in Surrey Heath, and this would be good to try out one of these aspects. Like I was saying, you are having good presentation for treatment services in those who have with the highest need, but those with that kind of lower rumbling increasing need, like I say, as you've seen, that is higher than the national average. So there is something about how do we identify and support those with some of those more population level pieces. So we will be looking at doing kind of geo-targeting, looking at our campaign work differently, but also on those kind of, in particular in those kind of crime links. It'd be really helpful if there's anything there that you think we should know about, be linked in with.
Okay. I certainly think we want to be part of the conversation. I think if there are things you want to do, then I think we'd like to know what the projects could be and see if we can find a good fit, and then we can try and get the right set of partners to together to coordinate and work on it once we know what the nature of the specific project would be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that would be my position. Nick, I don't know if you, before I let Jane or Sarah come in, Nick, do you want to add anything above that?
No, I think you're right, Sean. It's about understanding what the ask is, and then we can make sure we line up the relevant officers. And I know Jane will have a view on it as well. Yeah, but I don't think it's just the officers. I think it's partners as well, because I think when it goes wrong, these people present themselves. A number of these partners we're seeing here today, whether it be Citizens Advice Bureau, whether it be in the health service, wherever, the police. So yeah, I think we'd certainly be very open to considering projects as you start bringing them forward. Jane, please.
Yeah, I was going to sort of see if we could perhaps sort of work outside the meeting, Lucy, to see what we can develop. But certainly, I'd welcome an opportunity to work with Citizens Advice. Really pleased to see sort of Kate's got her hand up. And I mean, I don't necessarily think that the council will be the key agency here. I do think that this is a matter, again, of information sharing and actually building awareness. And, I think we all have really good platforms for that. And it's about sort of, identifying and signposting accurately.
We have 2 or 3 obviously secondary schools that could be somewhere to, as you mentioned, trying to prevent as well. That could be somewhere to start. Please, Sarah.
It's in a similar vein, really. Really pleased to see the Healthy Schools approach built in and working with that team and the strengths base, but and also really pleased to see the links with sort of serious and organised crime and county lines. I know you're linked into that world, but we commissioned some sort of targeted interventions that I wonder whether we could share some of that support with them. So when they're working with those particular clients, most of them are children and young people, we can kind of marry up what's available. So I think I've got your contact details, but I'll send you kind of contacts outside, things like Music to My Ears, who work with children who are at risk of criminally exploited, to make sure that they're sharing that information and support through their work. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I'll put my contact in the chat just so that thanks.
Yeah, one of the things maybe for James and Jane is I have a feeling we're not that great at collecting these presentations and sharing them, and I know some are more confidential than others. So I think some of Ryan's stuff we wouldn't want to go too far, but not all of it. So maybe that's something we just reflect on, that we try and get into the habit of what can we collect and what can we share, and then people have got it as a reference to come back to. Well, so I usually end up going around the loop and reading it again, and then you might need it at some point in the future. So maybe that's one for you and Jane, you and James to think about. Kate, please.
Yeah, just to say that at Citizens Advice we work quite closely with gambling awareness, and our volunteers are sort of trained to ask the questions to try and identify where gambling is an issue. It's often quite difficult to get that information from the gamblers, but we quite often see families coming to us for emergency crisis support, and accessing debt advice, and as a result of a partner's gambling, etc. So yeah, we're very aware of the issue, and certainly happy to, if there's anything that way we can work with Lucy better, we'd be happy to do so.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Oh, and Libby down as well.
Yeah, Lucy, I just wanted to say we had Ed Breton, I think his name is, from GamCare, as a speaker at our mental health forum last year, and he was telling us about the support for families and for people with addictions. So I don't know whether, if you're interested in his contact details, then just
he's on our steering group.
Ah, fantastic.
Thank you. So there you go. Linked
yeah,
up.
no worries.
That's great. Thank you. Really helpful.
Okay, so let me bring this to a close. So Lucy, thanks ever so much. Really interesting, really interesting presentation. Obviously, I think we all intuitively know the harm that this could cause to not just the individuals, but to their families and friends and everybody impacted by it. I can't help but think that all this advertising we're seeing every 2 minutes is not really helping, and that's before we even think about the digital side. I'm just thinking about the win a house worth 3 million in the Cotswolds I seem to see on a rotating loop all the time, but also the betting adverts that happen after 9 o'clock as well. They seem to just be repetitive. So one can understand how it's having an influence. So it's good if we can counter that and try and keep more people safe. And I think this is exactly the sort of thing that, as a partnership, we'd want to try and do, because if we can make small changes and just keep half a dozen families in a better situation, then we can all go home and think we've done a good job, I think. Yeah. So thanks again for that. Libby, you got your hand up. I think it's an old hand. Yes, exactly.
Sorry, I'll try and take it down.
A redundant rather than old hand might be more appropriate. Sorry, Libby. So if we move on to Mags, listen, nobody needs to get stressed about the time. We usually sort of ebb and flow a little bit, and we've got a little bit of flow at the end, which we can sacrifice if we need to. I think it's the quality of the presentation is really good today. So yeah, if we move on to Mags on the Hope Hub, please.
Share my screen. Can you all see that?
Not yet, Mags, no.
Nothing yet, Mags, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay.
No joy.
No, sorry, it's not letting me.
Mags, did you want to send it to James, and perhaps James can share it for you?
Yeah, go through because there's a lot of images.
Okay.
I can do that. I'm very happy to talk. I can talk it through. I know it's not the same.
Do that, Mags, and then get us a copy afterwards, and we can share it. How about
that? Yes, okay. I'll check
out
some of the images and it'll be easier. Yeah. Apologies for that. Sorry, I don't know why I can't do that. Normally it's fine. It's just not happy. Okay. Body. So yeah, I think most people know about the Hope Hub. So we exist for the relief of poverty. So it's much more sort of directly on the frontline work. And we have a day service and an emergency accommodation house, all in Camberley. The day service provides a whole range of drop-in. So we serve meals, we offer a laundry service, we do training, workshops, digital support. We help people and meet them exactly where they're at. So if they're homeless, they're quite often, they will be referred to us typically. If we receive a street link referral that somebody's been sighted somewhere in the borough, we will outreach them. And we will take, emergency items with us and then encourage them to come in and engage with us and access our crisis support and our empowerment services. So the empowerment services looks at housing needs, universal credit, debt support, physical health, mental health, and if they're open, gambling, and other aspects. So we do come across people that have been victims of domestic abuse, both genders, I might add, and we will support anybody aged 18 plus. So currently, our youngest we are supporting is 18, and we do support quite a lot of young people in the 18 to 30 range. And our oldest, who's currently at our house, is 74. So there's a big range. Generally, each year it's around 18 to circa 80 years old. We do a range of living well workshops. So that's cooking, that's digital support, debt management, anger, coping skills, money management. And we do cooking out in the community. So we will quite often do cooking workshops aimed at people on low budget. So food from a food parcel. It could be specifically cooking from one pot to steamer workshops and so on. And they have proved exceptionally popular. We've been doing them now for probably 4 or 5 years. And we're just about hopefully to receive another little pot of funding from Surrey County Council to deliver some more, specifically in Old Dean, St Michael's, and from the day service and the house. We're a warm welcome space in the winter months, so between October or November time through to March, we will provide fuel vouchers, meals, and we do a whole range of additional workshops as well as activities, so creative arts and just general things that help people with their well-being, really. We also have been running now for a year. We started as a pilot in January 2024, an outreach service from Old Dean on a weekly basis on a Thursday, and we continue to run that. It's proven very popular for people that wouldn't necessarily come into the town. or they don't want to travel, or they can't afford to travel. And people probably that may well have not engaged with services. So we found that outreach service has been very popular. Our digital workshops and training are also very popular, so CV, training, job support, etc. And we're also one of 11 Changing Futures delivery partners, which is supporting people with multiple disadvantage. And that programme, as an extension of that, will also have access to the gambling awareness programme for the women's group that Lucy referred to earlier on in her presentation. So that is actually going to be delivered by Oakleaf, who are one of the 11 alliance partners in the whole Changing Futures programme. But all of us were very much part of the content of that, but it made sense for one organisation to deliver it across Surrey. So that's the women's group. We've had roughly, in terms of some stats, I will share with you, because I think it's worth just sharing a bit of information. So firstly, the house, in the period April to December, the house is aimed at the short-term emergency accommodation service, providing people for 6 to 8 weeks typically. And the goal of that service is that we then support them in the evenings over a meal and afterwards. And then in the daytime, they access the day service. And we then help them find their move on accommodation. So we have had 25 tenants in the period April to December. So we started with 6 bedrooms. We've had to actually convert the living room into another bedroom. So we now have 7 bedrooms. And interesting stats, there's 16 males, 9 females, and 19 of the 25 had mental health needs, and 11 of the 25 were ex-offenders. And they have had at the house 469 individual one-to-one support. So it's a key sort of service, the house, as a successful move on for people progressing towards independent living. In the day services, in the period April to December, we've supported more people than ever. So in 9 months, we supported 234 people. 167 of those have mental health needs, 58 with substance misuse needs, and 94 of the 234 people were ex-offenders. So you can see that we're dealing with a very wide range of people. Of the 80 people that presented of no fixed abode, in those 9 months, we've successfully housed 58 of them. On average, they're accessing services 34 times each, which is just under 8,000 times in 9 months. We've outreached across the borough to vulnerable people and homeless people 353 times. And the day service has been accessed just under 2,000 times in that period. And we've served at the house and the day services nearly 5,000 meals. We've given out 571 food parcels and provided employment support on 97 occasions. And what's interesting and really pleased about is that we've supported 9 ex-offenders into employment, and 51 of the 94 ex-offenders have engaged really well in employment support. So I just think that's a really strong message, really, and encouragement for people that have been in the ex-offender in the criminal justice system. 115 people have attended training, some of them receiving their first ever level 1 or level 2 qualification. 348 living well workshops, which I mentioned earlier, and 130 what I call heavier debt management sessions. So that's typically when people are about £3,000 or more in debt. and that is a very significant increase. We've also successfully, and we're really pleased about this too, employed part-time but 2 ex-service users, and one of them's been working with us now for probably about 18 months, which is a really good outcome. But the challenges, the increasing challenges, are around mental health needs, trauma, cost of living, having to prove their local connection and having difficulty with that because they've been sofa surfing, so they don't have any form of proof, lack of social and affordable housing, private rented sector, reducing stock, increasing cost, utility bills, we all know about those, as well as we're finding in the private rented sector that council tax is also being placed on top of it, whereas quite often in the past in the private rented sector, council tax wasn't charged as an add-on, but it is now. Unemployment and debt. And so we find quite often that with the mix of the cost of securing a property, even if we're able to get them a benevolent grant for first month's rent and rent deposit, we find that if they are still on universal credit and they're able to secure the housing benefit at the rate they're entitled to, that still is not meeting the cost of the rental and the bills. And therefore, this is a national picture. Therefore, you are having a revolving door scenario. And we are finding, in fact, just last week, I think we had 2 of the very original people we had at the house come through as a revolving door. So they came to the house January 2021 when we opened it, and they're now back again, homeless, unemployed, in debt. And it's a bit of a dull picture, I'm afraid, if I'm honest, but we also have some great outcomes too. But that is the reality of the housing picture for people that are struggling with trauma and are vulnerable in this society, and it applies to all age. So the elderly people we have in our house, and we've had too many really, it's quite hard to see them. They generally come from an accent homes where their name hasn't been on the tenancy, but they've lived there for maybe 20, 30 years, but they don't have any rights. So they serve notice, and therefore they're typically on a lower income, no income or limited pension. And so they find themselves homeless. We work with absolutely everybody. We are very partner focused. We're very grateful for that strong partnerships that we have. So with Surrey Heath Borough Council, with Surrey County Council, the Police and Crime Commissioner, NHS, Frimley ICB, Frimley Fuel Allotments, we're Catalyst Connections partner. We work with a wide range of trust and grant funders, corporates, faith groups, community agencies and organisations, and it's all of those which enable us to deliver what we deliver. And we're very grateful to everybody and the whole community. And a positive news story is our winter campaign. So where we try and raise funds so that we can give everybody the best Christmas that they can possibly have in their scenario. And just as an example, we served 75 festive meals over 3 events. We gave away about 100 gift packs with deodorant and chocolates and socks, and a special gift, if you like, a gift of need like shoes, jacket, coat, etc. 16 hampers to people vulnerably housed, courtesy of Beeson. We placed homeless people in hotels for 10 nights over the festive period while statutory services were closed. Surrey Heath did fund a few of those, the rest we funded. And we provided food for the whole duration. a meal on Christmas Day and vouchers. And it's so that people, during the time when all statutory services are closed, other than really the doctors, they are totally stuck. So that's why we invest in this winter campaign, and we do work really hard to be able to achieve it. We love to celebrate, so we have celebration events when people achieve qualifications, employment, jobs, etc. And just to share a few comments from service users recently. So this is a homeless guy who's now housed, moving towards becoming work ready. He said, "Thank you, everybody at the Hope Hub. I would not have been able to turn my life around without your help, support and encouragement." And a female, young female, said, I did an interview with her actually, and she input into a complex funding bid on which we're working on mental health and suicide prevention for the young people. And she said, "I think coming to the Hope Hub saved my life." And another one said, "I'm over the moon. Thank you so much, everyone. I was homeless, I'm housed, and you've helped me into employment within 10 days. So we love the quick turnarounds and the good news. And in terms of as an organisation, we're a disability confident employer. We have secured the Investing in Volunteers Award, and we couldn't deliver our crisis services, the meals, the food parcels, the clothing, the emergency items that we're giving out all the time without our amazing volunteers, and so we're very grateful to them. And we're also currently working on delivering a safeguarding or securing a safeguarding award in terms of best practice. So
right,
I'm
Mags,
sorry
I'm going to have to.
slides.
No, it's fine. I'm going to have to guillotine you there because you've got so much to talk about.
Fine.
It's you could probably go on for another hour, easy peasy, I suspect. Yeah.
Yeah, no, finished. That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Listen, no, really, really, really good. And I think you said it was a bit. You said a dreary or dull. I can't remember the exact word you said, but I think the important thing to remember is what would it be like if you weren't doing it and the team weren't doing it. So
absolutely.
Thank you to you and the team and all the other partners that are part of the fabric that holds it together. So it really, I think, is making a big difference. It is a bit scary to hear, obviously, when you're getting people coming back through the door again, because that means we haven't sorted the root cause of the problem out. Questions for Mags? Okay, if you could get the slides across, Mags, that'd be great. We'll make sure we share them round. Sure. And I'll try and look out for you, and we'll maybe pick up on the mental health angle, because the revolving door and the high intensity service users was a topic of conversation in another forum the other day. How do we target our, a bit like the discussion with Lucy, how do we target our resources to have the biggest impact and reduce the cost to the state and the partners holistically? Yeah. Okay, good. So we move on to Community Safety and Prevention Board presentation, which is Sarah.
Hello. Hi.
From Police and Crime Commissioner for Surrey's office, yeah?
Yes, but I am representing a group of partners who are developing this new governance structure. So while I do sit sort of jointly in the PCC's office in Surrey Police as the Serious Violence Programme Lead, I am doing it for a wider partnership. And I can't seem to share it bigger than that. Can everyone see? Obviously, these slides are happy to share around afterwards.
I think it's good enough. It's good enough. Let's go. Let's go with it.
Let's not go that. Right. So yes, Community Safety and Prevention Board. Very quickly, you probably are aware that for the past 5-ish years, the Community Safety Board, as was merged with the Health and Wellbeing Board, and we've been working through with them over the past 5 years their sort of strategy. We are in priority 3, safer communities. But the kind of relationship with the Health and Wellbeing Board has had some benefits, but also over the last couple of years, we've realised that there hasn't been the space and the accountability for community safety at that sort of very strategic county-wide level. There's also been a lot of changes in terms of community safety, a lot of new duties, initiatives, legislation that's come through that we really, it was felt that really needed its space and time to kind of talk about outside the Health and Wellbeing Board, which is a very busy and a very focused on health arena. So it was agreed that we'd do a bit of a consultation and we'd look at what other partners thought about that. These are some of the comments. So as I mentioned, we need a single place for strategic leadership, that strategic oversight. The landscape underneath the Health and Wellbeing Board for Community Safety is quite cluttered and it's not sure who's owning what piece of work. So it's hoped that this review and this sort of restructure of the governance would help tidy that up. But what was really important and what came out was that strong place space. So we don't want to lose the place space work that we're doing. So while we want to give some kind of strategic oversight, really want to make sure the place space bit is still there. So the proposal, which was agreed by the Health and Wellbeing Board in December, was to take community safety out of that arena and create a community safety and prevention board. There's lots of advantages for this and there's a whole list here, but again, going back to that strong leadership, clear governance, supporting the work that sits under that. So some of our thematic groups around VAWG and domestic abuse or serious violence, to making sure they've got that top cover. I think there's lots of advantages here, but one I think is really, really key and comes up a lot in our discussion is around data and creating an environment where data is shared, intelligence is shared across the partnership. We have that coordination across needs assessments. We share the sort of the county-wide down to the local data. So people can really set about commissioning and developing interventions based on a data-led rather than what we feel is right. We've got that evidence behind it. The board has been developed with a strong legislative background, so we've made sure we've picked up all the legislation, all the kind of duties that sit around community safety at the moment. So you've got the really old Community Safety and Disorder Act from 1998, which has been updated, right the way through to the new Victim and Prisoners Act that went through Parliament last year, and the duty to collaborate around victim services. Today, there's a new bill going towards in front of government, so we'll have some more. So we want to collect all that legislative framework together and make sure we as a collective partnership are doing what we should be doing to respond to that government requests. So the aims of the Community Safety Board, Community Safety and Prevention Board, and the prevention bit's really important. So community safety is important, but prevention kind of sets us up for the future as well. If we look back at that legislative work, the government at the moment talk very much around prevent. They will bring in prevention boards at some point. They're focusing on other areas first, and Surrey will come in later, but they're setting that framework. So we hope by putting this in place now, we are future-proofing ourselves for some of that other government initiatives that are coming down. But the board's aim is to create that resilient and inclusive and safer communities in Surrey, where residents are protected and supported through proactive prevention, education and collaboration. We want to foster the partnerships between local agencies to reduce crime and disorder and antisocial behaviour, prevent harm and ensure sustainable environment of trust, respect and shared responsibility. So big aim there, but really what that focuses down onto is that leadership and accountability, sharing that data and intelligence, working in partnership to make sure we are delivering, coming at it from an early intervention and prevention lens. So we will obviously do the enforcement, and our partnership with the police will be key for that, but really getting upstream and understanding what's happening in our communities as what was just mentioned, and how we then can work together to prevent and put those interventions in place earlier. Linking to that, supporting our most vulnerable groups and promoting community cohesion. So they're the kind of overall kind of aims and objectives that the new board wants to focus on. From the work I've done the last 2 years from serious violence, we want to pick up the 5 key principles from public health, which is around collaboration, co-production, cooperation in data and intelligence, developing that counter-narrative and a community consensus. This just gives us a little bit of a framework to work within. The one that's really important to me is that counter-narrative. We hear a lot of stats and a lot of national news around how communities are feeling, crime rates, particularly when we look at knife crime. We want to develop our local narrative around this. So what is actually happening in Surrey? What are the big things that we need to focus on as a kind of wider community, and then down into our local communities as well. So this is the governance structure. So as I said, the Community Safety and Prevention Board sits across the top. It's the same kind of, if you think of that other strategic boards that sit alongside it, you've got Health and Wellbeing Board, Safeguarding Adults, Safeguarding Children. Right at the bottom, you've got the thematic working group. So you've got those sort of not crime types, but the thematic areas where we're already working. So VORG and DA, ASB, serious violence, prevent, which is obviously the terrorism, counter-terrorism, one of the 4 Ps there, serious and organised crime, and hate crime and community cohesion. So these groups are already established and already working, and what they would do is they will feed up into that county-wide board. In the middle, we've got the community safety partnerships, which are really key. So they kind of almost sit next to the prevention board because they hold that statutory footing locally, but there will be that strong working relationship with the community safety partnerships, and how we will develop that relationship I'll talk about in a slide a bit later. But then the supporting groups around a development group, which is the officer group that will support and make sure that board is successful. The Community Safety Forum, which is where community safety officers and leads meet to discuss what's happening, sort of looking forward around what initiatives are coming forward. And then a data intelligence and information sharing group, which is where we will bring all that data together. It will hold sort of the work programme around things like eSINs, and it will support that information sharing across the partnership. The membership of the board has been developed to reflect the legislative requirements. So this is the core membership. There will be others that support and others that work alongside, but it's those organisations that are named in legislation. That's how we've done the core membership. You'll see there from a sort of a district and borough, we've sort of looked at it in clusters, which was what was recommended from previous community safety board as working, and we are going to the chief execs in a couple of weeks to sort of talk about that and what that might look like for them. But we've got police and crime commissioner, chief constable, chief crown prosecutor, prisons leads, housing. So we're trying to capture those people who are named in legislation who have the responsibility for delivering community safety in Surrey. We are very mindful that there is lots of work going on, and it cuts across a lot of different partnership groups and lots of different pieces of work. So we want to create a really strong relationship with those other strategic boards. So safeguarding adults, safeguarding children. We've talked about some things today, gambling, for example, which links us across to the Health and Wellbeing Board, and on combating drugs. The work around the Hope Hub, which obviously links to safeguarding adults. So there's lots of crossovers, and we want to make sure we kind of respect where those work streams are taking place. We have cited them, and we don't end up with duplication. So the chairs of those respective boards are asked to sit on the new board as a sort of a relationship between the two areas and kind of support the work that's going on. I won't dwell on this because I know we've not got a lot of time, but there are some core partnership documents that we have to produce: community safety agreement, a serious violence needs assessment and strategy, and then a duty to collaborate needs assessment and strategy. And the board will be responsible for doing those. The first one we'll go with is the community safety agreement, which it sets the ambition for the whole of the new board, and then how we deliver community safety in Surrey. Data and performance for me is a cornerstone of this new board. I've touched on it before, but it really is about making sure we know what is happening in Surrey. We collect that data, we share that data across those different agencies, and then we provide it to either the community safety partnerships or down to those thematic groups, so they know what's happening, and we work kind of collaboratively around that data collection and sharing that data back, so we know what our concerns are, our issues are, our vulnerable groups are, and we can really target our support and our help in those areas. Also, what's been missing a little bit, particularly from the strategic side, is that sort of performance. So seeing where we are, seeing what's changing, what trends are happening, and what's going well, what's not going well. So that for me is a real cornerstone of this new board. And this bit is for you guys. It's kind of how this will benefit community safety partnerships. Obviously, you're a statutory board in your own right, so we can't make you do something. But what we hope this creation of the board will do was create those core data sets, will set that strategic county-wide direction, and take some of that, not responsibility, but take some of those big pieces of work and kind of support them across the whole county. Support that seeking to access funding and resources. So we, as the PCC's office, regularly get grants and things that come in, making sure that they are accessible by community safety partnerships, and also we make sure the right projects are going in the right places. Providing that specialist knowledge and priority areas to support local delivery, and providing a forum to escalate challenges and highlight any risks to delivery. So any issues you've got, there's now a route to go up to kind of flag to some of our key strategic leaders. And then what we're asking really in return is to be the experts in your local areas. We can put a county-wide initiative around VORG, for example, but you know best how that will work in your local area. So it's asking, this is what we want to do. How can you come and help? A bit like what we had that discussion around the gambling. There's some things that will obviously take place across the county, and some places that will be better in certain areas and certain communities. And there's another slide around the supporting partnerships and how we'll work there, but I won't go into that because probably the key one is that relationship with yourselves. So that's the presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much. That's very interesting. Questions, please, for Sarah. Gosh, I've got loads. I've got loads.
Sure.
That's because I'm a governance nerd. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
So a couple of things I'll throw in. I didn't. Some of these are quick ones. I didn't see probation listed as one of the partners. I didn't quite. Yeah. They are okay. Fine.
Yeah, it's very small. So when you get round, when you send this, when you see the slides, they're definitely on there.
Who actually has the duty here for this new board? Is it the top tier council, or is it the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner?
So it depends what legislation we're talking about. So most legislation talks about local authorities. So in Surrey, we relate that to both top tier and district and borough. So both Surrey and county council. The duty to call partners together and to ask what is happening around community safety is a duty of the PCC. So the Police and Crime Commissioner has that overarching duty, if you like, but each legislation has their own set of named responsible people, and they change slightly depending what they are. The Crime and Disorder Act has 6, whereas serious violence, I think, has a few more, includes things like education and prisons because of the difference in what they're trying to reduce and prevent. So but that's why we've tried to make sure that list of membership reflects all those legislative requirements.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, obviously, it's interesting timing, the launching of this in the middle of a few other things that are afoot, which might see a change for the PCC. It might see a change for top tier, lower tier, etc. So I do think. Whilst we've been playing with the views from the deck chairs with our colleagues across the districts and boroughs and the county, I do think this is probably a topic that needs to come back to that body. I think you mentioned to go through the chief execs first, which I think is the right decision. To see how we connect with it, which probably is a mixture of executive and non-executive, e.g. council representatives and executive representatives, which is what we typically do on the other related boards, to ensure cross county and cross body representation, which I think is what you're looking for. So I would suggest you take that to Hannah Dalton to get that on our agenda at some point when, like I say, we're not busy working out which direction we're pointing. Although it was nice to see we're going to have 3 unitaries from your slides. That was great news.
Oh no, that wasn't the an indication. That was
yeah, no, it was. I'm taking it as an
based
indication
on the police clusters. So yeah, it's.
I know what it was. I'm just taking it as a good indication.
I wouldn't want to preempt what's going to happen. I haven't.
I'm not
paid enough to be in that space. So yeah.
No, but it makes sense. And obviously, the police clustering is one of the factors that's being considered, along with health and a few other things. But that's not today's discussion. So yeah, keen to see that in a different forum so that we can make sure the leaders and chief execs engage properly. And I think the concept of the Surrey Heath Partnership with its statutory side, not necessarily its community partnership side, obviously linking in there to make sure we're as coordinated and joined up as possible, makes sense, because we can have a bigger impact if we're together. So what was it? One of the rugby players said it was spread out and stick together.
Yeah, sounds good. And I think that's a really cool point. I know there's lots of change and discussion in sort of local government generally, and that will obviously impact the Police and Crime Commission's office at some point. And I have been asked a few times, why are you doing this, given all that change and upheaval? But I think it almost feels like it's more important to do it at this time, because there's so much change. We need to hold that core and make sure our communities and our vulnerable cohorts are protected and feel safe, and we have that ability to kind of keep that work going while all the world changes behind us. We can keep going and make sure that we're working on some of those key things. We know it's really important for our communities, so we will keep doing that. And whatever it looks like in 2, 5, 10 years time, this kind of, we hope as an officer group will kind of set that foundation for that to be taken forward, whatever it might look like.
Fully agree. The world moves on. We're 2.5 years away from anything happening, so we need to make sure we're doing the right thing for our residents first of all. So yeah, fully behind that. I guess the only ask is, whatever those subgroups were underneath the main board, I think every borough should be represented there, because that's where these groups come together and try and do the best they can. So yeah, keen to see that happen.
Yes.
So that was all my questions. Nobody else has put their hand up. I'm amazed Richard Wilson hasn't put his hand up, but no doubt he's trying to save his questions in the interest of time. So yeah, really appreciate that, Sarah. Thanks for the update. And we'll move on without further ado to Kate at Citizens Advice Bureau, who'll take us in to the home straight. Thanks, Kate.
Is that sharing with you?
It is. You've passed the first hurdle. Yes. Well done.
Wow. I'm keeping this brief. I've got just a few slides. But I think I'm just going to give an update of where we are and what we're seeing at the moment. So obviously, Citizens Advice, our aim is to provide free, confidential, independent information and advice to help people address their problems, whatever their problem, whoever they are. So we're there for everyone. But in reality, we're certainly seeing more people who are vulnerable and the lower level of income. So in the last 12 months, we've helped just around 5,100 local people. The top 5 inquiries, unsurprisingly, the top inquiry has been around benefits and tax credits. We've had about 2,300 people coming to us around that. So people looking to improve their financial resilience and income. And this is as an effect partly of the cost of living crisis, which is still with us, and it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. Also, charitable support and food banks. We referred about 1,000 people to food banks over the past year, but we've also been delivering the Household Support Fund, and that has had a kind of mixed blessing in a way. I think it's brought our services to a lot more people's attention, but we have also found a lot more clients coming to us for some sort of handout, which is good in some ways, but those people are not always willing to go on to take the advice and information that would help them address the situation that they're in. So very much like Mags, we are seeing people who are revolving clients who come around time and again. As well as the Household Support Fund, we have access to fuel bank vouchers. We have the hardship fund from the local council and other small pots of charitable funding that we can use to help people, but we very much try and engage them in addressing the causes of their problems. And we've set up a number of projects around this, which I'll go on to talk about in a minute. Housing is the next highest issue, as again, as Mag said, housing, the cost of housing, the cost of renting in Surrey Heath and availability of properties. We're monitoring regularly the rental market as compared to the local housing allowance, and there is a big shortfall for the majority of people. It's very rare that we will find a property for rent available that is covered by the local housing allowance. So that's something that we're trying to take up as a national organisation with the government to try and address. Debt, obviously, again, we're seeing the levels of debt much higher and the complexity of people's debt issues. And a lot of that is around utilities, so fuel debt, etc. So in terms of the top benefit issues, localised social welfare, so that's the food bank referrals, that's the help with charitable support and the household support fund. Personal independence payments, again, disability payments, the time of getting a decision on these, and also the numbers that have to go through to appeal before they get a positive decision. But we help support people complete those disability forms and also deal with appeals to help people get what they deserve in those areas. General benefit entitlement, again, it's all about maximising income, initial claim, and council tax reduction. And the top debt issues are around, unsurprisingly, fuel debt is the number one issue. It used to be council tax arrears, but that has been overtaken by fuel debt, rent arrears, and credit cards, etc. The profile of our clients that we're seeing, the majority are female, 63%. 54% have a long-term health condition or disability, and that obviously is of concern, and we are seeing a lot of those people have mental health conditions as well, and they are clients that are much harder to help and harder to keep engaged, but we're seeing many more of them coming through our door. We see around 19-20% other than white British, and that's why we try and maintain our face-to-face service as much as possible, because a lot of those are English isn't their first language. And in terms of the people that we support across the borough, 27% of our clients are from the Old Dean and St Michael's, with the rest being sort of distributed further. So we're covering the borough, but we certainly, most of our clients are in those top two wards of deprivation. So in order to address some of the issues that we're seeing, we have a number of projects, and I just wanted to have a quick run through of these. So our latest project is funded via the Southern Gas Network. It's an outreach project, and it's providing crisis support, energy advice, and income maximisation to vulnerable and underrepresented client groups. So it's to tackle fuel poverty, helping people stay safe and warm, and we want to try and reach people across the borough as much as possible. So it's very much focusing on going out there to try and engage with existing groups and activities. So if anybody has any groups, Mags, you were saying about your group on Thursday on the Old Dean and other places where our advisor could go along and engage with people. We're really trying to build that, those connections, and again, take the advice out into the community. Social prescribing, we are part of Surrey Heath Social Prescribing in partnership with the Borough Council and Surrey Heath Community Partners, community providers. And again, that project was born out of what we were seeing with a lot of our clients who come into us, some who really just want to speak to somebody and talk about their problems or issues or share them with somebody. And a lot of the time it's because they're isolated, they haven't got anyone to turn to for help, they're not engaged in the community. So we have a wellbeing advisor who will link them in and help them navigate what services and groups and activities are out there to improve their well-being. And a large part of what stresses people out and gives them concern is their financial health and financial situation. So we have a wellbeing advisor who will go out particularly to those who are housebound and home-based, and provide help in the home, in filling in disability forms, in advising them on various issues. So that covers out, again, reaching those people that are harder to reach and trying to improve their well-being. Again, related to health, we have our Macmillan support advisor, helping people who have a diagnosis or living with cancer to have less concerns about their money by giving them information about grants, benefits, etc., specifically funded via Macmillan. And recently they've opened a Macmillan Centre in Frimley Park Hospital, and that advisor will be based there on a Thursday, but they have access via the phone and email, etc. So that project has really been building up a client base, and that serves people across Surrey Heath, but also wider into other parts of Surrey as well. And our finance and wellbeing support service, this is a project that we're doing in partnership with Catalyst, who supply a wellbeing support advisor. We provide the financial advice and to provide that wraparound support to help clients who are affected, their mental health is affected either by their concerns about money or money is affecting their mental health, basically. So helping them to try and address their issues. And we've recently started going into Coldingley Prison to help some of the prisoners in there around these areas. This was intended initially to be a project for people with low-level mental health, anxiety, depression. But again, we are seeing people who have quite severe mental health issues coming to us. And the main issues we're seeing with that is trying to keep people engaged and trying to sort of bring them across the line and fulfill what they need to do to address their debt issues and money issues. So that is an ongoing challenge. And I'd be quite interested if anybody is interested in working in partnership. How do we tackle these people who keep coming around time and time again, returning with the same sort of issues? On a sort of to help people who are in less debt but still concerned about money, we now do these financial health checks, which is a dedicated appointment that can be either face-to-face or over the phone, to help look at how people can maximise their income. So look at whether they're entitled to any benefits, if they're getting the right benefits, look at what debts they have and how they can deal with those to reduce those as much as possible, and also look at budgeting and where they're spending and where they could save and reduce their expenditure. So that's the kind of one-off package, which then if people want to go on and get further help with debt, they can come back to us for further help with that, or if they have particular welfare benefit issues. And finally, as I say, the Household Support Fund, which we administer on behalf of the council, as you are probably aware. The last round was quite considerably reduced in terms of funding available, and we had made a point of opening up to older people initially before Christmas who were not digitally engaged, so that they could complete an application form, and we would help them do that over the phone to make sure those people were accessing the support. Because once we opened the fund, generally in January, within 2 weeks, the whole allocation was spent. So there is a huge demand still out there for that crisis support. As I say, we do have other means, other pots, small pots that we can help people with, but that is the main fund. There should be another iteration of it in the coming financial year, but we're still waiting to hear about the details of that and how that's going to be distributed. So that was a quick whistle-stop tour of the projects that we have at the moment. Most of our projects we are operated by paid staff because of the specialist nature of the training that's involved and the continuation that is needed to support the clients, but our core service is still largely delivered by volunteers. We are struggling a little bit to get good volunteers, and the training is very intensive with Citizens Advice, that we do expect a lot of them. We know that we ask a lot of them, but we are having a big push to look at our training and how we can increase getting people on board, because the demand is definitely out there and we can only manage as much demand as we have resources. But yeah, quick whistle stop tour. Any questions?
Thank you, Kate. Yes, questions for Kate, please. You've got off lightly, Kate.
Trying to get in before 1 o'clock.
No. I mean, just again, a tremendous amount of work getting done. I'm curious what you're seeing as your kind of run rate at the moment in terms of simple terms, people coming through the door or accessing by phone. Are you seeing that plateau? Are you seeing it continue to increase?
The increase, particularly on the phone, because we're now part of Surrey Advice Line. We're very much looking at how we work across Surrey better, but particularly with the coming changes to the possible unitaries. We're kind of in discussions about how we better work together, but we have a head start because of the Surrey Advice Line that we all support across Surrey, and the demand is definitely high on that. We're certainly not taking all the calls that we can manage, but we very much want to focus our face-to-face services on those that really need that face-to-face support and direct people who can self-serve or get help relatively easily to the phone and other information sources.
Right, good. Because my reason for sort of querying that is, I think in the last day or so, I think we're all aware now the fuel's going up again. Was it 6.8% on average? And the one that's a bit of a stinger, I think, for all of us is the water as well, which is seeing quite a step change. I don't know if people remember, but when they privatised the water companies, originally they shut off water to various places, and TB suddenly started re-emerging that we hadn't seen for long periods of time. So I don't know whether you're in consultation with the water boards about their relief provision.
Yes, we understand that they have various programs for people who are vulnerable, and they're signing up people to sign up for the vulnerable support. Similarly with broadband, there are certain tariffs that are available. It's not always easy to get them, but we certainly promote those. And we try and sort of push some of these. It's similarly with pension credit, we push pension credit up to Christmas, so because if people were entitled to pension credit, they then got the winter fuel allowance backdated. So we try and promote these are areas where people can save funding, save money.
Yeah, and maybe just before I hand over to Nick, I mean, that stat you gave of 27% from Old Dean and St Michael's, just put that in proportion. They're only 11% of the borough, so it's significantly statistically different demand. Nick.
Thank you, Sean. That kind of led into my question, actually. It'd be interesting to know, Kate, where the demand is coming from elsewhere in the borough, and whether there are any other outliers outside of St Michael's and Old Dean.
Okay. I could just, sorry.
The other question I had was, you referenced obviously local housing allowance against private rented sector rents. If you've got any information you're able to share, I'd be very interested in seeing that, because clearly it would help with our housing officers' understanding of what the market is doing.
Okay, yep, we can do that. We're just at the moment doing another round of monitoring, but I can share the statistics. We're doing it across Surrey, but each of the boroughs is looking at that. So I'm happy to share that. But yes, just in terms of the, just a quick rundown of the boroughs. So 10% is the third highest is town ward, which I think is probably because, again, we get people who are homeless and they would be classed as town ward. Bagshot and Watchetts are 9% each, Frimley Green 8%, Mitchett and Deep Cut 7%, and then it's the rest are sort of 6, 5, 4. St Paul's is the smallest at 2%, and Lightwater at 3%. But there's quite a spread, but there definitely seems to be the wards that have the most issues.
Thank you.
Good. So listen, let me just bring things to a close. Again, Kate, thanks ever so much for your presentation, the work of Citizen Advice Bureau and all the volunteers that you've alluded to. Yeah, so thank you for that. Thank you to everybody for all the presenters today. We've really had a lot to work through. I don't know about anybody else. I feel mentally and emotionally drained from that, but also energized in terms of the great work that everybody's doing. But also deeply humbled, obviously, by some of the circumstances that people fall into. We will reconvene, I think, in 3 months' time for our next meeting. And in the interim, I know I have cut off one of the agenda items. I felt the quality of the presentations deserved it and the content deserved it. If there was any updates people wanted to give each other, could I ask you just to drop 1 or 2 lines into the email? You've got everybody's email addresses in the invite. Just share it that way. And Jane and James will work on collating materials together that will sanity check for confidentiality, and we'll get that pushed around as well. Okay, and Jane tells us we're back together on the 21st of May. So thanks ever so much to everybody, and have a good day. And for those of you lucky enough to be in part 2, which is a statutory requirement, but it is an obligation on us to try and look and see if we can improve processes to prevent domestic related homicides, then I'll see you at 10 past. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.